Hey, welcome back to the Metropole Grid. How's it going? It is a Friday morning. It's 1808. Yeah, it's 1807. Sorry, that's big truck horn outside. How's everyone doing? Surprise stream. As you might know, the new ban list just came out today. The 2508 ban list has dropped. You can find the link in the YouTube description below if you want to check it out. 3 cards banned. No. Yeah, 1 card unbanned. So just at the top, we normally do videos on these days. We don't have a video prepared for this because this wasn't communicated ahead of schedule. It just wasn't possible. So for those who want to know, in terms of the standard ban list, this is tournament standard legal as of, I think, August 1st, August 2nd. So basically for the Continental season, as much as I think there's only like 1 or 2 mega cities that still are past that date. We have Deep Dive banned, Info Bounty banned, Bankhar Gantulga has been banned, and Luminal Transubstantiation has been unbanned. So this is a very powerful Shaper 5 influence multi-axis card that does see amount of splash in other factions. Just run 3 centrals, see the top 8, steal 1 or 2 cards if you have a click gainer. Very powerful, won Worlds last year. We have Info Bounty, which is mostly only seen in Sable. It is one of the Mark synergy cards that came out in the Borealis cycle, and it says the first time you ran your Mark, which is clickless with Sable, who gets a click back the first time a turn she successfully runs her Mark, gain 2 credits. Very powerful card. A lot of the modern Sable decks are running 2 of them because you want to find one consistently by the early to mid game. And finally, Bankhar Gantulga. The Anarch connection comes down super ubiquitous. There's been no tournament deck, Anarch winning tournament deck for a really long time that hasn't ran at least 2 copies. Some of the sub decks are on 2, most are on 3, and it just says subroutines equals net damage, which is something you can deal with because that doesn't end the run. Finally, Luminal is back. The 3-2, 1 of per deck, System Gateway Classic. It was the most beloved 3-2 out of all of them. It might be the most powerful. It usually is. And when you score this, you get another turn, which is a pretty wild effect. You can't score more agendas on that turn, but another turn is really good. And HB is getting this one back because HB is not in a good spot, that's for sure, and hoping that this will change it. Now, normally we do a video here. This is not a video. This, just to be clear, is a live stream, so it's going to be a bit sloppy, but also chat is here, so we can hang out with chat. So I'm going to be answering questions. I have all my slides prepared as if this was a video, so we're going to be running through them and talking through them. I'll still be like talking with chat, so this surprise stream will probably be around for like an hour maybe. But just so y'all know, there's a new ban list out. Enjoy it. We'll love to hear your thoughts. If you're watching on Twitch right now, apparently Restream Bot isn't working, so hopefully it's not too lonely. Most people are hanging out on YouTube. Surprise hello. Surprise hello, Rishni. How's it going? Banhar's the biggest thing here. It's so important. Yeah, I think Bankhar, I don't know. Deep Dive, they're all very important. These are all very big bans, that's for sure. I think overall I'm actually like really optimistic about this ban list. I think like for the last weeks or so, people were shouting like, what is their ban list? What is their hopeful ban list? What do they think was going to get banned out? And I think Deep Dive, I was hoping was banned out. That's great. Bankhar is expecting to be banned out. Info Bounty is something that only recently someone suggested. I'm like, actually, that's a really good idea. And then I was hoping Luminal actually wouldn't be unbanned. And then other cards, there's a bunch of things in the article. Shout out to the articles. These articles are really good, written by the standard balance team, to talk about the other considerations they have, because a bunch of things that people in chat already are like, oh no, Oko, it's not banned. There's nothing to do with Oko. All that stuff is really interesting to explain how we got here. Poor Ryu is filling out McDonald's application forms as we speak. Ryu got absolutely gutted, and it's such a bummer. Like, we'll talk about it. For those who don't know, Ryu is one of the new runners that came out in Elevation, and Ryu really wants, like, Ryu is basically mulligan for Bankhar the deck, so that like she can just run through subroutines, take that damage, got some discards. Like, it is the card you mulligan for. I think this is the strongest mulligan for a single card identity in the whole game right now. The second most was probably like Lu mulligans into Imp, or modernly Gourmand, as hard as possible. But this is like really, really, really bad. I think it's kind of unredeemable. There's no reason to play Phoenix in the modern meta, just DOA. I do think that will change, and I have no doubt that this means that in the future we'll have a Bankhar sized hole that NSG will figure out a way to build a card that they don't think is as powerful, that wouldn't end up on a ban list. So right now, yeah, I would say 0 reason to play Phoenix. In core, 0 reason to play Phoenix. In startup, probably 0 reason to play Phoenix. Just unfortunate. I do think we'll talk about Hoshiko too, because Hoshiko didn't get banned. I think that was one of my expectations. So I do think a lot of the other Anarchs also just don't see any play in terms of competitive standard, for better or for worse. So that's also not my favorite. But yeah, Anarchs actually has a pretty big what's called like mix up here. So we'll see what happens. Surprise stream hype. How's it going? Are you unhappy that FUD and Nebula didn't get banned? No, I'm okay with FUD. Like, FUD is interesting to see what FUD's going to do. Nebula not getting banned, I'm not surprised. I am not happy because I just want Nebula to get banned. And it's like really unfortunate because this article actually like totally mimics the exact fear that I had here. It's like very clear about it. It's like Nebula is frightening, but it's not doing well enough in the meta to warrant any sort of like ban action, which I kind of wish Nebula was winning more events just so we could get rid of the damn thing. Because I think there's a difference between something having to be banned or wanting to be looked at because it is winning events and it's like ubiquitous and the most powerful thing, or something just being really, really, really miserable. And I don't care if it's like, if something is miserable but doesn't win every tournament, I still don't want to play against it. You know what I mean? Anyways, we won't soapbox about it. We'll mention Nebula, I think, once more, maybe twice more. I went to my first Netrunner meetup. Luna, how'd it go? Hey, welcome. Not gonna lie, I definitely doubt we're seeing any corpse side bans until the next set. I think it's a possibility. They're very clear at the end of this article that the next ban list, I like that they're dropping the dates. The next ban list update, whether there is a change or not, will be on the 17th of September, which gives you a month before Worlds. And that's really cool to have that expected date. So it's largely, we're going to see Continentals, and then based off that result, I could see a corp card getting banned. I think it's possible for sure. Luminal was unbanned, yeah. Instantly have +2 friends. It's that easy. That easy. Bankhar was warranted for a long time, but everything else? I think Bankhar was warranted for a while. I actually thought Bankhar was a really interesting card in the last meta. Very, very powerful card. There's always going to be very, very powerful cards. I feel like the reason that Bankhar feels a bit worse right now is that corporations feel a bit slower. So it's harder to set yourself in a situation where you're more like you have the 2 ice. You have the money to res the ice. You have the card draw to get that ice. And so in a world without Rashida, Bankhar feels a bit worse to me. That's for sure. Planning on taking the Anarch lock deck. I'm not sure what the lock part of that means. If I missed your chat message, apologies. Hopefully you're doing well. Soft band Rio. They have banner, they'll be fine. I mean, not really, but okay. Hoshiko's gonna be reigning the meta. I actually don't know. I think taking Bankhar out of Anarch is a really big change. I do think this actually hurts a heck of a lot. Anarch's breakers are kind of ugly. Their economy is not as robust and easy flowing as criminals at least classically were, so there might be some issues there. My guess is Anarchs are going to have to move to a bit more other ways to cheat through ice, so we'll see more Botulises, we'll see more Boomerangs, and that will probably do something. But I think why it's so hard to predict what's happening, and this is really interesting because as soon as we transition to talking about the article, is Alco didn't get worse, right? It's more so that they want to make other corps feel better. And this is really important. They talk about this in the article, like the Uncracked Egg. Why Alco is really good is because its ability is messed up good, but it's also one of the corporations that's naturally the strongest, the most robust against deep dive, because you can knock it out with damage. They can't run centrals with an enemy. You have so many agendas. You protect archives. Like there's so many reasons. And it's really good against Bankhar. Because again, Alco, whenever they take net damage, you get counters. So if they Alco through a Sice and Tom, not only can they be up to 6 net damage, you just got like a whole bunch of Alco counters. So Bankhar is not like a great answer to Alco. It still works in a pinch and can be applied well, that's for sure. But it is like the deck that is naturally the best against 2 of the things that need to be deemed to be banned. It, to some extent, also like reasonable against Info Bounty, because you have interest in icing up certain servers that you don't always have interest in icing up. You don't ice up R&D that much. But I think it's less so that Alco will get less good, because I think Alco is probably still very, very, very good, but more so other corporations can feel like they're competing on that level. And I think that's actually more what we want at the meta. I think a lot of people would say that the meta is runner favored at this point, and it is, you know, there's some still really strong corp decks, and we've seen tournaments where Alco is like 60-70% win rate. Like we've seen some pretty wild numbers. I just think we want to share that win rate across more corporations. I want to be clear, not a surprise. I do think I generally like metas that are slightly corp favored, like a 55 corp meta to me feels like that's the meta that I want for some reason, as long as you're not playing an odd amount of single-sided rounds, I guess. But that's a really big thing. It's like making these cards worse will make Alco better, but it also make other corporations better. And I guess the hope is other corporations will see more part of the pie. I've died to Bankhar and Anansi so many times on a Neon Static video. Just a rite of passage. How's it going, Dan? Ban Shaper not because it's good, because I dislike it. You know, sometimes you just gotta be clear. Like, it's totally fine to say ban this, I don't like it. Like, that's okay. Your opinion, like my opinion, doesn't really matter that much. But it's good to know what we don't like. Hey, Brennan. There should be a distinction between kill corpse and scoring corpse in these stats. I don't think so. That actually, it's like interesting data, but I don't think it serves anything for balance. Like at the end of the day, you just still gotta play the game. Okay, looks like the Fabergé egg charms from, I don't know what that is, but it is definitely a Fabergé type egg. All right. Is Seb firmly now better than Hoshiko? No, I'm not 100% sure. Ban Shaper already. Because I think losing Bankhar actually really hurts Seb. Because a lot of Seb's pressure comes from single instance cards, right? Like the transfer of wealth on turn 2 with the Bankhar, right? The ability to be able to praxis without committing breakers. Like all of those things are actually super, super dependent on having a Bankhar. Now, I want to be clear, a lot of the good Seb decks recently are not even playing 3 Bankhars, they're playing 2 Bankhars, and they say like, oh, it's not that important. So maybe if that's the case, I think I'm actually rather happier with that. I think Seb is a much higher skill level, and it does feel like there's a bit of counterplay on both sides. Whether you think corporations are still too weak to like fold to the sort of pressure that Seb can put off, at least losing Banhar is going to hurt that a fair bit. So I honestly can't tell. I do think the decks that are maybe weak to deep dive might be a bit better against Seb because they want to ice up centrals and play a bit like mid-range slower. Maybe Seb struggles against that. It's hard to tell. But I do think losing Banhar to Seb is kind of important. I think it actually kind of matters. Hey, Kako, sad to see Dive go. One of the most entertaining cards in the game for spectators. Yeah, there's some truth to that. Like, there's the flourish of the 8 cards, just like there's truth to the complete, what's it called? The touch-ups being an exciting card. But I'm very, very happy that thing is gone, at least for now. I think it's a card that can definitely be unbanned at some point. It's just, the reason why it's so powerful is like very, very, very good. Isn't this all a huge Nebula buff? Yes. Which were good. It's good. We're getting back to that timeline. I think we lost some very powerful cards into Nebula. Like really powerful cards into Nebula. Phoenix Nebula matchup was actually really sick for Phoenix. That's bad. We lost Banhar, which is good into Nebula. We lost Deep Dive, which is probably okay into Nebula. And we lost Info Bounty, that is absurdly good into Nebula. We'll get to that. We probably should just start going through my tabs. But yeah, this is definitely Nebula support. Really, really bad. We smoke on the Deep Dive pack today, baby. Cranked, how's it going? Yeah, I'm worried about that. Raindrops cut marshmallow. All right, let's go. So we'll go on a journey together. While the meta is far from solved, it is clear that Corp Agency is suffering. This is like such a cool sentence because that is, if you've heard my insufferable whinging over the last couple of weeks, Corp Agency, this is something that I find out when I'm playing the game. I saw this in core format too, is the amount of things that I'm able to do, the amount of things my opponent is able to do, not only just like the cool things they do per click, just the options seem to be a bit restricted, right? There's just a lot of decks where like, you know, putting something behind a single piece of ice doesn't make a lot of sense in the meta. If you're losing to criminals who are running all over the place because you can't stop the, you know, the info bounty giving 2+ credits free every turn, like you just collapse to that sort of stuff. We just lost so much in the rotation, which is not a surprise. We knew this next upcoming ban list, this ban list was going to be so important because the first ban list going into the rotation, it's really hard to nail that 100% because the format is just too different. For those who don't know the context, this last rotation when Elevation came out, we lost all the old FFG cards, and a lot of those cards were like very, very powerful corporation staples, up to the point that was only like, even you could just say 1 or 2 cards specifically helped all corporations so much that they were kind of integral to the way the game was balanced. So the card I'm talking about specifically is, she must be open in tab here, is Rashida Yahim. And this used to be a 3 of in basically every corporation deck. And there was this card that goes on remote server as soon as turn 1 that if it fires, the corporation got 3 cards and 3 credits for 1 click. And that is just so absurdly good to start your next turn with 9 cards in hand, with like 8 to 9 credits on turn 1, or going into turn 2, so that you can start to play the game and push yourself forward. You can afford 2 ice on the remote server as soon as turn 2. And this card was in every deck because it was no influence, it was fully neutral, it was super easy to play. And it did cause a big difference to corporations. And so all the cards you see to date, barring Elevation, were balanced around, to some extent, corporations having Rashida. And so many of the issues on this ban list are actually built around that. I could argue that all the things on the ban list are kind of a result of corporations not being able to keep up because we're in a Rashida-less world. Whether they can just directly reprint Rashida, I think in the set they tried to print Rashida-like cards that are bespoke in every faction. Things like Antil Excavator, things like Humanoid Resources. I'm not sure what the other 2 should be. I guess Tsakhia has like so many that do something like that to some extent. But that's a very big difference here. And so to me, a lot of the problems we're dealing with is just corps seem like they're behind. And so you saw the last like 6 or 7 bans have all just been runner card bans to kind of bring them down to make that fight a bit more even. And that's what this list is doing for sure. This is reflected in the narrow set of viable corp archetypes and in the tendency of successful corps to lean into exploiting variants. That's also wild too. We've talked about like blowouts, just like non-games, you get the FUT behind a single ice, you can just like kind of roll. Just to show you the stats, because the stats are really interesting, and I've pulled them up in a couple other places. But if you want to use a website like Maker's Eye, you can just run through all the data, and this is like pretty wide reaching data. It's kind of loud, but these are all the reported in-person and online games off of Always Be Running in the last meta. And so it's not so much that I care about the corp and runner win rate, because it's actually like super, super even, because this information has a lot of noise. It's all over. It's all player skills. It's all like, it's everybody. But this is the representation that gets a bit strange, right? Like, Aoko is the most played corporation, and it's actually incredibly winning. For being this represented, it still has a very good conversion rate, followed by Nebula that hasn't been winning events, but like, oh my god, get rid of this. And then Wayland's been doing really well, as much as was a bit of a slow start at the beginning of the meta. This is all the way since the rotation, the last ban list. It's just about as many players playing Aoko as the entirety of the HB faction, which that's its own issue. And then NBN is functionally just Nebula and nothing else. And this is what it is. It feels like a lot of corporations feel pigeonholed, that they have to play Aoko, they have to play Nebula, Op, and I'm actually surprised. Oh, Nuving's right there. Yeah, Nuving's there. So it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of options. This is probably not as wide as it should be. You can install any number of non-unique cards with the same name. Unique cards are denoted. Oh, excuse me. Why did you start before I'm Andre Clockwork? How's it going? Rashida's so common, it makes you wonder why she wasn't one NBN influence. Side imbalance and a lack of corp diversity are interwoven issues with the current meta. The power of runners forces corps into specific game plans, and then runners can exploit the predictability with tailored tech tools and deck building. I think a lot of people are actually clamoring for certain tech tools on the runner side to be banned out, and I would be surprised if that's the case. It does seem like, you know, NSG wants the kill decks to work, and so I don't know, I think they just want to make the corp decks more powerful. I'm not 100% sure. This problem is exacerbated when the runner knows the exact threats they need to play around, most notably in open decklist top cuts. I've seen open deck lists, top cuts, where the corporation win rate hits, I think, 0. I think I actually saw a top cut this year where the corporation win rate was 0. Obviously, that's like an outlier, and it was only a top 4 cut. It wasn't top 8 cut. But these, the like runner favored meta really is shifting in top cuts significantly. You generally see like 10%, 20% up when it comes between Swiss rounds, which are closed deck lists, so nobody knows what they're playing against, and then open deck lists where it's you have your opponent's deck list. And that does not favor corporations, in which their kill combo, their ice, what they put in a remote server, how quickly they can win from any board state, that is a bit more public information. Our hypothesis is the proliferation of kill decks is a symptom of this greater imbalance, because successful corps are the only ones that have the cards that give them a chance to fight back against the extensive set of runner tools. A lot of time right now, and we saw this very quickly earlier this summer, is that we've entered what was called an orthogonal meta. I think the first time that this was really clear was maybe the Summer Showdown earlier this year, where the majority was like 11 out of the top 16 decks were these orthogonal corp decks, where they weren't scoring to 7 or doing any of this like honest Netrunner, quote unquote. They were all being like, oh, this is a weird kill combo deck. This is going to kill you in a certain way. This will flatline you if you don't see it coming. Because it felt like that was a much easier thing to pursue than having the time, the credits, the safety, all that sort of stuff to score to 7 points. And I totally sympathize with that. It's still true to this day that mostly it's a mix. I do think actually a lot of the kill decks are now actually scoring out on the back of kill threat that is actually helping them. But we very quickly entered a meta where corporations seem to be saying that we cannot score to 7, so we have to kill. And then runners are actually getting really good at not dying because they just add in a couple trivial tech cards. Shout out to Tsakhia's like recent list where it's just like a good criminal deck that has like 2 or 3 tech cards into it, which really opens up the matchup spread. Believe that this set of runner bans opens up avenues for different corps to find success, forcing runner decks to make trade-offs and prioritize some matchups over others, rather than being able to effectively challenge every corp archetype. There is definitely runner decks in this meta, like Hoshiko to some extent. I have much more experience playing Sable, that they felt they were good into every single archetype. For what it's worth, I don't love playing in a meta where I'm bringing a call that is like 90% favored but has like a 2% matchup into something else. That just makes me anxious as a player. I don't like those hard calls when you know the game's going to be miserable if you just kind of pull the bad, turn 1 game against a random opponent or whatever. But yeah, apparently things are too strong. And yeah, the good decks have very, very consistent matchups. This in turn should bring us closer to the side balance parity. I've never been so excited to see 3 of my special interests, Cyberpunk, Magical Girls, and card games. Oh, is it as stock? You can proxy it for sure. Definitely proxy Hoshiko. Hoshiko's a lot of fun. From these 4 changes, do you feel you will enjoy the meta again, or are you in the heart still holding on for the next expansion to flourish your Netrunner love? I have been a bit miserable. I'll like be very clear about that. I think this will definitely help, specifically because half the time I'm playing Corporation, so that is going to help overall, I hope. On the corp side, I do think actually playing corp right now is still kind of interesting, particularly if you're playing like a powerful deck, because you do have some cool choices. Like Aoko is a hell of a thing to play. A lot of moving pieces. I think it's fun. On the runner side, I don't know what to do. I think the runner side is actually kind of more of a bummer because the runner side feels so much smaller than the corp side. The corp side, like maybe you can argue you just can't play a certain subsection of decks, and maybe you can now because you don't crumble to Bankhar, you don't get run over by Info Bounty, like you don't lose to just Deep Dive. Like that's good, but actually it's the runner side that is kind of bumming me out. Because I do think the same runner decks that were winning yesterday that might be slightly changed in the near future are the same runner decks that have been winning tournaments since 2022, 2021. Like they're just functionally the same decks. We're seeing Hoshiko decks that have like no new cards in them that are like the Hoshiko deck that won Worlds in 2022. Like it's the same stuff. At the end of the day, it's still good Netrunner usually, as long as it's not a stomp. So I don't know. I do think new cards, like this format being as small as it is, does really want an influx of new cards, which is a tricky spot because making cards at the speed of that anybody might want is just harder. The way that NSG handles or that they operate, that's for sure. But yeah, new cards are definitely going to be hype, but it always is. But I do think the format is so small that new cards are going to be good. Oh my God. Hey Twitch, baby Friday Metropole. Hey, sorry. So Twitch, y'all, how's it going? Alec, Phil, Kate. Yeah, Restream is down, and apparently I put the other chat on top of the Restream window that's only saying Twitch, but I thought it would fill in from the bottom. It's filling in from the top, so I lost the last top messages. Restream bot is broken. I don't know why. Maybe he's not ready on a Friday. But I'll see your messages now. Excuse me. Feels like Krim was the only runner that got cards from Elevation. Yeah, well, no, the Shaper cards are good, and we're gonna see more of them for sure. Shaper's just in a weird spot. The Anarch cards, I couldn't tell you like maybe one Anarch card from the last set. I think maybe NSG has been a bit careful because NSG always like favors classically his favorite Anarch cards, so maybe that's due time. But I do think like the IDs just like totally whiffing in the Anarch card pool really sucks because of the ubiquity of Hoshiko. Like that's a bit of a bummer. I was actually really hoping Hoshiko would be banned in this, and it's not even mentioned once in the cards we've considered. We're trapped in here with him. He's trapped in here with us. Hey, Warlock. I think Shaper looks at least quite a bit different than the previous meta. Krim and Anarch are a bit samey. Yeah, Shaper's the one interesting one. I do hope without deep dive, we're going to see what Shaper's win condition is, and maybe they'll have to interact more. I think my like umbrage with Shaper right now is that even the right way I take umbrage? Never mind. My complaint about Shaper right now is that they're very uninteractive, but I'm hoping in a world without deep dive, they have to move to interaction and running a fair bit more. Now, hitting a piece from Alco is wild to me. We'll talk about that right now because they mentioned it and I totally sympathize with this take. An uncracked egg. Alco has been a ubiquitous force in the meta, but successful AU lists have been radically changing over time. We believe that the reason for the new Jinteki identity's presence in the current meta is partly that it's the only corp that can exploit Bankhar and disrupt deep dive. This is such a big point. We suspect that there will be other viable options to explore that are currently being kept down by their weaknesses to runner cards that are hit with this update. We hope that some number of core players will now feel empowered to shift to more rush or glacier style scoring strategies, reducing the overrepresentation of AU at tournaments. And again, I think that's what we've said before. I do think a big part about Alco, not only is it fun and it gives you agency, not only is it so flexible and clearly very, very powerful, but it is also very good against the things that are very strong on the runner side. And so opening that field up hopefully should show, or at least give people incentives to play other stuff so we don't end up still like this, where like there's more Alco players than all HB players. We seriously considered several of AO's tools as candidates for banning. They said seriously, like I really do think they mean it. They would love to be able to ban something from Alco because they know the community wants something banned from Alco, including Sting, Anemone, Bladderwort, to name just a few. However, and this is huge, given the variety of archetypes being played out of AO, trying to take targeted action is like aiming at a moving target. It's very hard to be sure that any given ban would actually reduce the identity's meta presence, and we do not want to risk banning a card that could be a useful tool to other corps and having AO bounce back unaffected. We will keep a close eye on as many Alco archetypes over the Continental Championship season and revisit making targeted corp bans if corp diversity doesn't improve. I expect we will see an Alco ban before Worlds. I don't think we'll see a ban at Continentals. I don't think that's going to work out like that, but we'll definitely see something before Worlds. And like this is so interesting and so hard because like this is Alco, right? Its ability is incredibly flexible. It works on a lot of archetypes. When we first saw the deck come out, we saw there's like 15 cards that are core to Alco just to fire their ability consistently. And that number has shifted down to like 9 cards. But if we look at all the options, like how do you ban out this deck? Without like, yeah, if you ban out Moonpool, that's probably a potential. If you ban out Regenesis, that's a potential. But that also probably destroys the rest of Jinteki. But it's just so hard. Like this is one of the first decks that D, who mind you is on the Standard Balance team, they won the Summer Showdown with, and it's like end of the line Oppo research, right? Like it is a kill tag deck. Then like this is just like days later we get published this first and fourth at the Canberra Megacity. This is the sort of hostile architecture Bladderwort list, but this has Holloman as a skill, as a win con that can fast advance Regenesis. Here, sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Liv. So this is like already very different. This is a week later. Then we get the modern Oscars list, which I'm showing because it has other interesting things. We saw some measured response versions. This is one with the complete image that can do an uninteractive combo kill with like Reaper functions. This is from Pittsburgh Megacity. This is just an Angelique Garza Correa version that's just playing hostile, but not playing Bladderworts. Like this keeps moving. People are learning to play more ice. They're playing more operations. Then we have this basically ASA group flavored version with fully operational Holloman. We start playing Scatterfields. We're no longer playing Bladderwort. This one's on 2 Moonpools. a powers that be. This is, you're gonna get shot in the face. This is Lunari's version. It's on 3 measured. Like, it just keeps changing. Now we're at like full HB. This is Nemanias, Chris Dyers, who just won the UK Megacities, did really well there. 3 Scatterfields, Managarm, and a Weddick. We're using our Managarm to protect Foot. And then this was just posted the other day. Thomas Haas from California has been playing this list, which is like a uninteractive touch-ups and to see how they run kill combo with Foot. Like, I don't know what you can do. The deck is going to be different. The Alco deck that will win at Continentals might not look like the Alco decks you're playing now, let alone the ones you're going to see at Worlds. I don't know what you're meant to do about this. I think this is such a hard thing to chase. And I do think any of the power cards here are also going to be the power cards for other Jinteki. So I think there's a big chance that we'll see an Alco ban coming into Worlds. I just don't know what you can do now because Alco has been that diverse, that interesting, as much as it has been the meta lead. And I do think we're going to see more other corps on the basis that, you know, we can maybe play something else at this point. Hopefully. We catch up on chat. How about the daycare thing? Cohort? You can get rid of Cohort, but Cohort's actually like a really cool card in so many things. Like Cohort's a really important poetry card or like HB Assets card, I think. You could play that in any of the other Jintekis. It's like, you could do it. I just don't know if you need to do it right now. I think they're more likely, and they're being very clear about that, to see what happens, make runners less powerful that makes other corporations more desirable. Because if you're not playing around Deep Dive and Bankhar all the time, is Alco the best thing you can do? Honestly, yeah, I think Alco is pretty cracked, but like, I think we'll see what happens there. I get the decision for sure. Hey, Buzz, the rationale here makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope it shakes out the way they describe. Yeah, it definitely, I think Alco is still going to be quite good, I'll be honest. The card has very good text. The card pool is really good. Regenesis, Moonpool, there's some very, very, very strong cards in that deck. So I have no doubt that it'll continue on. Maybe it'll continue on to be the ID that you hate playing against, the controlling the message that wins Worlds like what, once and a half, twice, but is still like at every top cut. That's like probably fine. That's a successful, competitive, strong identity. I just think the problem is we can't have it be this, but I think it's not this because it's overperforming. I think it's this because PD is this. So that's at least what I think about it. We'll see how it goes. No egg target feels extremely bad, IMO. I say that as an egg player. We'll see what it changes again. It's going to be very interesting for sure, but I kind of sympathize with it. How big is the deep dive ban? I know it's really strong at the moment, but I haven't been seeing a lot of Shaper and Sable decks moving over to the twinning prior to this. And is it enough to open up Corp meta without Egg and Nebula taking over? From my experience, it's going to be pretty important. I think you just see less deep dive because you see this much Alco. And Alco is really good against deep dive. So it's really hard to deep dive when, again, you're expecting about 1 in 4 of your opponents, if not in some tournaments, 1 in 3 of your opponents to be Alco. And that makes deep dive hard. Not impossible, but hard. Right? We'll show that like the list that D was playing into this meta where they were playing Alco, they were playing Deep Dive, and they won the event with a Deep Dive list. I think at this point, people have realized things like Reg Sable, which is less, I would say, cheesy, not value neutral than Deep Dive Sable, is also very robust and has maybe a better matchup spread. So people have shifted off of that. I think most of the Shaper decks are still on Deep Dive. They're running multiple copies, which is pretty easy, but they also like can play good Shaper game, which is nice. But I think the biggest thing is like the decks. There are decks here that I think you just cannot play because you'll have like a 0% win chance into Deep Dive. Like playing, I don't know what the example is, but like try to play Bangun and not lose to Deep Dive. Like I don't know what you're meant to do about that. I don't know if Bangun is going to be the thing we should be anchoring the meta to, but like there's so many identities here that feel like they have no shot against Deep Dive. Like I even struggle playing LEO into Deep Dive. I really do. It should be so good against Deep Dive, but I can't stop it. Like they still have an extra clicks when, especially if they play Sable, they play Swift, that you just get Deep Dived on. Like it's really, really hard to deal with. So I think you're seeing less Deep Dive now because of the meta correction, but I do think Deep Dive was just keeping, especially early in the meta, people were playing decks and be like, oh, you can't win. You just get Deep Dived on. Like try playing PT Unchan. You just get Deep Dived on. Like it's really, 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 really difficult. Sorry, I posted a question. I was very behind the stream. Not at all. Do you think the SPT is hesitant to ban elevation cards so quickly? No. Banning PGP would seem to be a fairly targeted Alco ban, but I can't sympathize with not wanting to ban new stuff. The SPT, like, I think they slightly avoid banning the newest stuff because it's kind of more interesting in some way to see how we can respond to the newer stuff. We have seen classically, like in the last pack, a card was banned very, very quickly. We lost Tributary at like a month in. It was like one of the fastest bans. So at some point they're like, okay, that's too much. I don't think we're there yet. If Nebula got banned today, I'd be very happy, but like, I don't think we're there yet. I think Alco is still producing some of the most interesting games. I want to be also very clear, if you're watching this and you're like not so much a incredibly competitive player and you're a more casual player and you think playing against Alco is like misery and the worst, please Express your opinion. It can be to me in chat. Maybe I don't like read it out, excuse me. But like, I do think also just the sentiment around AoCo has to be understood. I'm not sure if the standard balance team is like as sentiment based as they are like, you know, competitive numbers based. I'm assuming they're both. Maybe that's an uncharitable take. I think they have to care about both. But even if like the sentiment of playing against AoCo is not fun, that is definitely something that's worth communicating. I think if you're playing a good deck into AoCo, it's a very interesting matchup, but clearly it's very powerful. The solution isn't let us do PD again. Sorry, Jeremy. AoCo being played that much is not a problem. It's a symptom of another greater problem. There are less good things to be doing as Corp. Yeah, exactly. There's very few decks that feel like you have as much agency as AoCo. And they're very clear in this article. They want Corp agency to go up. Bankhar praise, hey Dapper. People weren't playing the corpse that deep dive is strong versus as much. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's more so that people are not playing the decks that just lose to deep dive, which turns out is all the like honest corpse. They just lose to deep dive. It's very hard to beat them. Andre trying to gather sympathy ban. No, but like it's real. It's like I want to be very clear. Numbers based banning is definitely important, but also like people's opinion, people's expression, people's feel is sometimes as important as the numbers. So the solution I most to make scoring agenda is honestly a legitimate way to play and win the game. Yeah, and these changes will definitely help. They will definitely help scoring out corpse. This is the thing is like, that's a big thing about deep dive is if you put all your ice on your remote server to be a scoring deck, you just lose to deep dive. And that hopefully won't happen. We'll see if like a conduit messes the game up or not. We'll find out. Personally, I'm not played against Egg because I don't have players to play with locally. Oh, sorry, Spider. Hopefully you can play some online or do a bit of a travel or whatever you want. That makes sense. Biowak be very scary ice now. Yeah, I think there's enough revolvers in the meta. You have to watch out for it for sure. It doesn't get beat by Boomerang or Bonchless that easy, so that's nice. All right, explanation of card choices. These are smaller paragraphs. Like, this is how much conversation that the SPT wanted to talk about AoCo, because obviously, like, chat wants to talk about AoCo because people have strong opinions at AoCo. And then Bankhar gets like a paragraph, which I think is so funny because this is the amount of work that goes into testing and banning to figure out what they can and can't do. The SPT team is really, really clever. This is what the AoCo paragraph. And this is, oh yeah, Bankhar's really good. We can't deal with this. I just want to put that into context because I do think it's a hard problem. Bankhar Gantulga mostly clearly warps the balance between runners and non-kill corpse. In a matchup where the runner hand size is irrelevant, the inherent downsides of taking damage is mitigated by cards like Raindrops, Cut Stone, Strike Fund, and Steel Skin. These are all cards that either give you benefit from firing subroutines by drawing cards, which is really important, or by giving you cards or credits when you take damage. Bankhar's ability to walk through ice on any server is game warping. It is a 1-credit install that can single-handedly put the corp on the back foot from as early as turn 2. I'm pretty sure when Bankhar came out, I'm not sure when Jeff and I put us on a tier list. I think we were like, this is probably busted, but I don't know if this supports it, which is like such a silly take in hindsight. Just to show you, Bankhar comes down, beginning of your turn, you pick a server, and the first ice on that server that you encounter, the subroutines become net damage subroutines. That's a problem, again, if the corporation doesn't care about doing net damage to you, and they want to keep you out by having an end the run subroutine. Of course that is. And so Bankhar obviously is one of the most powerful tools you can drop on turn 1. This has been the death to a lot of like very straightforward ideas. Like ASA group isn't legal right now, but if your game plan is put something behind a single piece of ice, like good luck. As much as ASA group does have play against Bankhar because you can make a lot of different remote servers. LEO seems really difficult. You still have counterplay because you have LEO, but the problem with LEO is like now you need to get 2 ice on your remote server, and one gets Bankhar, then the other one hopefully ends the run. But if it's a Byroid, they can go through it, and then you can trash it. Maybe they can't come back. I think the biggest reason why Bankhar suddenly got as oppressive as it is again, the change of the speed of corporations. The amount that you're asking a corporation to get extra cards, to get extra credits, to get the extra installs before their remote server is safe, let alone their central servers is safe, is so different in a world where you can't jam a Rashida on turn 1. I think that's one of the biggest things is we just do not have the tempo to build servers quick enough or have the money to pay for them fast enough that Bankhar does not feel like a total problem. I think that's the biggest difference. We've seen some cards, they're not exactly working. Like Humanoid Resources probably is better than the amount of play it sees. It's really, really hard. And then we have the decks where like the Bankhar just opens up play patterns like Transfer of Wealth and Seb. That's really easy to play. Praxis is really easy to play. There is just also very importantly for context, there's been no competitive Anarch deck, I'm pretty sure I can say confidently, that is not running as many Bankhars, if not 2 Bankhars. It is just core 2 Anarch basically since Bankhar has come out, plus or minus a couple months. This is a huge change because this card is doing so much heavy lifting in the early to mid game. A lot of the Anarch decks have like pretty mid breakers. Like Echelon sucks in the early game. It's really quite bad. Rising Tide also ass breaker, really, really bad breaker. Buzzsaw even has huge downsides to it. And all of these breakers will only be good eventually once you get them down. You get more breakers installed, you get your leech. And cards like Boomerang and Bankhar allow you that ability to push yourself forward to get to that point. I think this is a very big difference to these sort of decks, and I don't know what they're immediately going to do about it. But again, every single Anarch list, I want to be very clear, these are all like great lists, and it's been like this for years. This is a huge change. This is a Seb deck. The Seb decks are running 2 Bankhars. I don't fully understand that. I was running 3. I do think deck size, there's a lot of restrictions on Seb, but like Bankhar is still a really good Seb card. Essa decks, this Cacophony deck, like 3 Bankhars. This is also important. Like, what can this Essa deck do without Bankhar? I don't know. It is going to be very, very different. And if you ask me, the Anarch breakers are not really, they don't feel that special right now. They feel clumsy. I feel like the liquidity required to install your breakers and start breaking in Anarch might actually suck. I'm not sure what we're meant to be doing about that. Again, well, there's more Hoshiko decks. Like Bankhars in most of them. This is 2 Bankhars. I think we're going to see a bit more Botulus, which you can tech around on the corpse side, play your Fly Swatters, play your Boomies. Fly Swatters still good, probably will be even better. I think Boomerang will come back a fair bit as well, but it's very, very tricky. I don't know what Anarch is meant to exactly do here. I just want to say, like, Raindrops Cutstone, probably still a great card. Very, very good with Bankhar. It's still a fine card to face check to get this card draw. And again, people in chat were talking about this. Such a bummer for Phoenix. I would really like Phoenix to be great, and this was like the Phoenix card that turns on Phoenix's ability, and obviously this is banned. We'll only wait for the next set in which we hope for a new Bankhar-like card, but like Phoenix is just unfortunate cardboard at this point. And I get a lot of install discounting at least. Yeah, we might see more decks that are like, you know, pricing into their breakers cheaply and quickly. Maybe we'll see Gachapon again to get like quick setups. But the Anarch breakers like do require a bit of support, right? Like Rising Tide does just suck. Like it's not good unless maybe you're like pricing through your deck so fast that it gets there. I used to go with that Bankhar and Hosh, but with that Cleaver and Moshing, that deck no longer keeps up. Yeah, that's true. Also, Moshing's a huge change. Hey, Severin, it feels like there's zero reason to build Jinteki decks that aren't Outgo. Well, I think I will change, Severin, because like, I know I've heard conversations. I'm not a big PT and Chan player, but the problem with PT and Chan is like Seb is an issue. Transfer of wealth is an issue. Criminal aggression is an issue. Bankhar is a problem because you're trying to rush out an agenda behind a single ice on turn 1 or turn 2. All of these things hopefully will be mitigated. The fact that you just died to deep dive because you don't have enough ice for central servers, let alone the money to afford it, I'm hoping that will change. At the end of the day, maybe that's still the truth. Maybe it's still a problem, but I do think it's going to help a lot and give them more breathing room. Is it enough? If not, we'll see you in the next ban list in September. But I do think it pushes us in the right direction. I think it really does. The only reason to play RH is just to get that play that cool card with a cool skull in it. Yeah, I think I know the ology. I think that's the Calypso, right? Or didn't realize that PT got released, to be honest. It's a fun idea, I think. At least Phoenix can play Banner. I mean, yeah, I guess so. If Rising Tide is that good, why not play Banner, huh? There's going to be a whole lot more finality coming up. Yeah, that is like weird too. Is like, I still think twinning is probably going to be okay. And I honestly think twinning might be even better because if you can't run super consistently, maybe Hoshiko's worse. Maybe you can consider Topon. My guess is no. Hoshiko's still the best. But maybe this means that you, instead of running, you know, every turn, you run every 3 or 4 turns to give the big twinning dig. Maybe that means you can just send the finality out because running is expensive. So we only run very less often. That doesn't show, that does kind of insinuate that you want to be playing less Hoshiko, but I'd be surprised. Hoshiko's just that good. Stargate probably is a bit too expensive at this point because you need to run most turns and sometimes twice for Stargate. I can't tell. I really can't tell. Recently, Pub Runner PT and Chen was very good. Diogen, your data points for what is good is like, I don't think the sort of conversation on the global meta that we want. I'm so sorry. Hey, Toronto, I think a 45 card deck with 3x price, 3x Gachapon, 3x Bling will rush to lock build going forward. Oh, that's kind of neat. I played a bit of Bling and thought it was actually really quite fun, especially in Seb. But yeah, I could see it. Price and Gachapon make Bling fire somewhat consistently, and then you just play like your Stone Chips and draw through your deck, and then that's probably one of the decks that plays 1 or 2 Ashens and just resets its deck once it sets up at such a expensive speed. Oh, I don't think it's a Hosh ban would have done much. People would just play Reg Orange Soup out of Topon or something instead. Yeah, but I think that might be more interesting. I think Topon is harder to play. I think Topon is higher variance to some extent. It's harder to play. The decisions are more difficult. It is worse. I think they're worse into assets, is my guess. Like, I think also we could got DreamNet back, which like I'm not sure if we need to add DreamNet back if runners are still running everywhere, maybe for Shaper. Reprint Patchwork? I mean, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Anyways, the Bankhar changes are massive. It's hard to tell the distance what it means, but it means scoring corps are better. What I also worry that it means that some ice that's really hard to deal with will get better. Like Glacier strats might make more sense. Because at the end of the day, there's only like one card in the game that deals with Logjam well. And it's called Hush, and nobody's playing it. But like now you actually can make big ice a really big thing. Oh, actually, that's not true. The one thing you have to watch out for is there's a big chance that people will just move back to crew. If big ice or mid-range ice is hard to deal with, I think Devil Charm Crew could easily be back on the menu. I think for the Seb decks, they have been kind of slacking and running 3 crew, 1 charm. I think we might come back to more charms, more leashes. And then I don't know if there's an AI breaker that makes sense in that context. But I do think there's actually a big case that if breaking becomes difficult, we'll move to the next best tool, which is destroying the ice, which I do think people will be upset about that. I've already been having a great time with big BOAC BTL. Yeah, exactly. And I do think if that becomes more common, you will see runners realize, like, I can just play the Devil Charms, which were kind of mid into the Alco matchup. More Samasamoon would make sense in response. Yeah, Sama's good. Sama's definitely a good card. There's no Cleaver anymore. And is she Shaper, Trick Shot, Creative, and now Deep Dive? Let Shapers breathe. I don't think it's that exactly that. How's it going, Michelle? I'm kind of glad I won't have any Patrick questions judging our worlds. Oh man, they're so fun. Do the fun thing. It's just fun. Reprint Patchwork, somewhere Cephalopod Shutters. All right. Next up, Deep Dive. Another card which has been clearly warping effect on the metagame since the last rotation. The Corp's only real counterplay is to knock the dives out of the runner's grip. They can no longer counter cards like Biovault, Border Control, and Crisium Grid to prevent runners from reliably closing out games in one turn with 1 or more dives. And these are all the cards, Deep Dive for the uninitiated, 5 influence card that came out in Midnight Sun. If you've ran all 3 central servers successfully, you can spend a credit and 2 clicks to play this, and then look at the top 8 and then touch one of those cards. If you have an extra click, which Shaper has in-faction ways to deal with it, or to add clicks, let alone you have multiple ways to import cards, things like Swift, or just play this in Sable, or play Hannah, Pichachan is the other one. There's a lot of ways to make it so you can win in a single turn. It's a bit of work, but usually the play pattern modernly in Shaper is steal points early, like steal a 2-pointer or 3-pointer, hopefully from the remote server, and then just set up, because you don't care. The corporation can't do anything. And then once you're ready, once they're really like forcing you, you just run central, gain a click, C8, C16, whatever you need to close the game out. It's really, really bad. I think, just to be clear, like a lot of people like Deep Dive because it's exciting and fun. I think like I've never really liked these alternate win condition cards like Jaichinho or Deep Dive. I think Netrunner is really good when it's about touching cards. I think it's just more exciting. It means the economy matters in a different way. It cares about R&D lock, trying to count where the agendas are, all that sort of stuff. And while some of that stuff is present in Deep Dive, this is basically just saying, you do your game, I'm going to ignore you. It is like Netrunner is so much more about like, oh, I see what your game is, I'm gonna have to directly interact with it. This, you just ignore their game, you run 3 centrals and it can be over. We've seen some really cheesy criminal lists. When you get Swift and Sable, you're getting a 6-click turn consistently, and you can win in a single turn. You can play multiple Deep Dives, or that's all you do. You ignore, you make 3 runs, the game's over. It's just kind of the worst. And the article is very clear that we had a bunch of tools back before rotation that could deal with it. And I'd argue that that's actually probably not the most important thing to me. Crisium Grid, this card was around for a really long time. This is reprinted from First Contact, which came out, I want to say 2014. 2014. This card just said successful runs aren't considered successful, and it has a big old butt on 5 to trash. So you put it on central for 1 influence, you res it, and they have to trash this for 5 and then come back, or come back on the following turn. Border Control obviously ends a run, while you have LEO, which is the closest thing to it. Even LEO is not surviving against Deep Dive all the time. And then we have Biovault, which I always forget. This is such an important card. If a card like this comes back, I think it's going to open up the game a fair bit for a bunch of different archetypes. I would actually again say, Andre, like a broken record, is while these cards were important, it's Rashida again. I honestly think it's Rashida again to some point. I think if corporations just gain that 1.5 extra turns, that is the card draw money they need to present better problems, to push themselves in the remote faster, to get ice on centrals. It all keeps coming down to Rashida. I'll be honest. It'll be nice to have a Crisium Grid, as much as Crisium Grid showed up in 1 out of every 10 decks in the meta for the last couple of years. It's more so that corporations are just not going at speed enough to keep up with the Deep Dive, and they're just losing to it. Deep Dive is everywhere. One Worlds last year. This is a triple Deep Dive list. You can still largely play something like this in our Asana. We played against one last night to some extent, had a very exciting finish. And then these sort of decks are the sort of decks that have that really uninteresting play pattern. Shout out to D, D's the best. But they just like, you watch any of the replay from Summer Showdown, D just steals 2 points, goes to like 45 credits, and then says, okay, I'm set up, I'll just win. And they just make the runs, and then they just win with Deep Dive after popping Hannah. We lost to this deck last night too, out of nowhere. I should have seen it coming for sure. Are we 4-4 in predictions? Yeah, I actually think we did pretty okay, but I don't think I locked them in. I said enough things that would be alright no matter what. If you had one crackpot theory on an ID that was not viable before, which is viable now, who would it be after the bans? What are you most excited about to build? Oh, weird question. Shit. I'm worried that some of the bigger ice gets better, which I think I'm not like stoked for that. I'd have to come back to that. for sure. I think it might open up Reg Crim, which is kind of interesting, as much as it'll just be a different flavor of Reg Crim. But I think some of the other Reg Crim IDs are actually now comparable, which is kind of cool. You can only get so much done with border control and centrals against Swift Sable. Yeah, exactly. Like it helps, but it does not win the game. Just slow the game down by 2 turns and these problems will mostly solve themselves. Sort of, but I think you'd rather just speed the corp up. Ferris will probably see a ban soon. I don't think it's likely. But Ferris is 10 strength eventually. Vangoon is coming around. I'm waiting, that's for sure. Again, Sable decks, really don't like this deck name, but this is the sort of deck that can just run 2 deep dives and then just close the game out. Really quite strong. With Swift, you have 6 clicks. The fact that your criminal can play lie low on click 1 and 2 and then still deep dive, honestly, kind of messed up. Really do not like that. But these are the sort of decks where it's like, oh, we barely want to break ice, we barely play the game, we just ignore you and play our solitaire game and then combo off. It's not great. As much as this has not been good classically, because it's very bad into Alco, it turns out. What does this mean? Well, Shapers don't have deep dive, and while criminals haven't been consistently playing deep dive for a bit, it does mean Shapers are going to have to figure out a different way to win the game. And while Shaper has a couple options, I'm probably forgetting an important one before someone says who shook in chat. Conduit might do it. I think this is really difficult though, because I'm not sure how good Shaper is at running. I do think they do set up their late game rigs, but Conduit requires you to run repeatedly, which maybe that's a thing that we do with our Asana when we get this down and get some extra clicks back with Fizerum. But some of those support pieces I think left for that cheap running central spam. Twinning, this is really good, and so far in Shaper it's not been super popular. I do think there's a chance it'll show up. I'm not sure what Shaper recurring credits you're playing. You could play a couple companions, I guess, but that's kind of hard. Whether we're going to be moving to like Devadata drones and the sort of like Shaper extra card accesses like Pretty Mary, I don't know, but I'm not sure how Shaper is meant to close the game out. Oh, actually Cataloger, maybe it's just Cataloger. That we get to like 4 points and then close the game out by controlling Cataloger. Like that's another option. This card's very powerful, as much as it is pretty slow. Conduit will never be good enough. Conduit used to be one of the best cards in the game, so I wouldn't say never. But when Medium was around, which is functionally a better Conduit, as much as in different faction, this is one of the most powerful cards in the game at a point in time. So I say it could do it. Yeah, Cataloger seems great. It's a bit slow, and maybe a bit slow is fine, but Cataloger gives you that amount of control that you want for sure. What is this tab? Oh yeah. This is a big difference too, which I'm kind of interested in. I think some of my concerns with Shaper as of recently, and shout out to both sides of D, a couple of years apart there, is that Shaper doesn't run that much anymore. And I think that might be one of the interesting changes, is that this modern Shaper that I showed the other D list, once it steals its first 2 to 3 points, it barely needs to run. It wants to run as little as possible. And so much of the Shaper economy right now is attached to just installing cards and using those installs to push you forward. This was the D's deck that almost won Worlds last year. And this deck is running Swift, obviously because it's a deep dive deck, but because it's running like a dozen plus run events, right? Like running in Criminal was in Shaper was so powerful last year. Obviously Trickshot got banned since then, but the sort of event-based interactive Shaper that wants to run like once or twice every turn, we've moved so far away from that. And there's a chance that now without deep dive, we have to be a bit more interactive. We have to go for our singles. We have to like set up our conduit. We have to run more with Devadata drones. I don't know what that's going to be, but I'd be very interested if Shaper could run a bit more. Knickknack hasn't got like wide approval. Some decks like it. Some decks don't like it. Some think that's just not worth playing. But right now, my biggest issue with Shaper is that their play pattern is like pretty stagnant and kind of like just actually boring, where you are just setting up. And now, at least without deep dive, that might challenge those play patterns. That's for sure. Burner being a Shaper card makes me sad. Me too. What a cool criminal card. We don't see a lot of Burner though. Let me catch one chat. Cataloger's so clunky though. Yeah, it is. But if you need to win the game, it is just good enough. Maybe we need a Maker's Eye again. Yeah, sort of do, don't we? I think a Maker's Eye would be kind of fine. Like maybe just play Jailbreak Shaper. I have no idea. Shinzo is actually the powerful card, but banning is probably less fun overall and buffs Potatoes Nebula. I think Nebula got a fair few buffs from this, unfortunately. Continuing to talk about the SMC ban is wild. No, we aren't banning that. It is the card that has shown up the most in any ban list article. It is the card by name that has been set the most. Quotation totally, citation totally needed. Obligatory Daywee Knickknack shout out. I wouldn't go as far as Daywee. Laura, how's it going? But yeah, run base Shaper, like that's exactly what you want to do. Quite happy to see deep dive go away. Me too. I think that is my favorite change of this ban list is deep dive going. It really ruffles my feathers. You're stoked to see twinning banned. It might even be more common without deep dive. It's just harder to play in Shaper unless like you're doing Mantle. There's no obvious ways that don't cost influence, and the Mantle twinning deck is like real deck. We've seen a couple versions of the lists that do that, so that might be a possibility. But yeah, I don't know what the closing package is for Shaper. Yeah, twinning Shaper with Mantle, maybe Vernissage. Oh, Vernissage is another Shaper deck that can do that. Yeah, maybe interesting. For Size, you can kind of play around slightly as a corporation, so it's not like you should count on it, so maybe Mantle is just good enough. The most ubiquitous runner, however, is not running either of these cards. Sable Sintashta Nusha has been sweeping through the meta, with a consistent level of reliability against the whole spread of corps. While we considered banning Sable herself, we are usually more hesitant to ban identities, and banning Sable would take most of the cards that use the mark mechanic out of commission. As such, we are taking a similar approach to our previous attempts to balance Hoshiko decks by banning the most ubiquitous tools used in Sable decks, Info Bounty. Out of context, there's this card called DreamNet that is a very powerful card that's not, rather ubiquitous play, but this card is really, really good in Hoshiko because Hoshiko is digital most of the time, which means that whenever you run with Hoshiko, you get a card and a credit. So instead of like straight banning Hoshiko, this was 2 years ago in August of 2023, they just banned DreamNet instead. And it obviously made Hoshiko less powerful, but not powerful for sure. So they're trying to do the same thing. So maybe Sable will still be playable. I actually think Info Bounty might be more important for Sable than DreamNet might have been for Hoshiko, but that sounds like a wild sentence as soon as I've said it out loud. Info Bounty provides every Sable deck with a way to maintain a strong economy throughout the game, where other criminals would run out of gas. We're hopeful that the change will encourage criminal players to explore a diversity of other identities and economy options, while reducing Sable's ability to effectively challenge any corp game plan. This is Info Bounty. Comes down for 2. It's a job. That doesn't really matter that much. When your turn begins, identify your mark, and then the first time each turn you run a mark, gain 2 credits if you breach that server. For context, Nusha's ability says at the beginning of your turn, you roll a mark, and then the first time you make a successful run, you get a click back. Which means even if you just put down the Info Bounty and the mark is archives and you have no reason to run archives, you just clicklessly gained 2 credits. Pause any replay of any Sable game you have played, watched, spectated, whatever it is that they're playing Info Bounty. Info Bounty usually gives them like 14, 16 credits. Open market matters. Yeah, open market does technically matter. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, yeah, all right. The job, you're right. The job was relevant. Info Bounty is usually a 14 credit card. Let alone what it does to a corporation, it forces them to ice everything. Heaven forbid they play a Carpe Diem, run their mark. It's a clickless 5 credits. Clean Getaway, a clickless 5 credits. It is jobbed. It is so good. Like, this is taking so much money out of the Sable list. And that is so important because, again, where's my Rashida tab? I think it's a Rashida problem again. Is the corporations don't have the time and money to ice up all their centrals. And if they do, it's at the cost of them actually playing the game in the remote server if they're the honest corporation that wants to do the basic Netrunner thing. The time it takes you to ice up 3 centrals, you don't have that time. You don't have that ice. You don't have the card draw. You don't have the money. So you can't. And so you end up in situations like last night we played against a Sable deck. I think that Sable deck got, yeah, exactly, like 16 credits for free because we were playing an acid spam deck that does not have the ice or time to ice up centrals. Some of that is our decision, but this is like such a strong targeted attack at Sable, and I think will be a huge issue for Sable. We didn't see the numbers so far, but this is the runner meta representation. And so as we saw Oko being as large, Sable is exactly the same amount of the meta, 18% playing Sable. Almost as much as every single shaper is one identity. Hosh falling, not that far off, actually a fair bit off, 14 to 18%, but Sable is the most played. Now, if you scroll down and look at the win rates, Sable is only at a 52% win rate, so still above 50. And I want to be very clear, anytime that a corporation or a runner, an identity is played that much, there's a lot of noise in that because everyone plays Sable. So while the good players are probably at like a 65, there's players who are newer, who are struggling, who are probably below that. So this is a very noisy thing, but Sable is converting really well. Hoshiko's a 53. I guess for context, we should look at Aoko, but Aoko is at a 58% win rate with being 17% of the meta. Oh my gosh, Prop the most at 53. 58% win rate. Yeah, did not get any bans. We'll see how that works out, but yes, it feels so good. It has such a good matchup spread and it is doing relatively well. And I think this will be such a big bullet for Sable to catch. Very, very rough. You're losing a lot of money. Now, if you don't have the run package, right? Like say your mark is archives, what are you doing? You can still play your run events. You might have to consider Penny Shaver. Not all decks are playing Penny Shaver. I know Tsakhia was, but a lot of people are still playing Kermes, but now this might make more sense. But unless you have a distinct run event, you now lose value on a lot of your marks. Like this is why Info Bounty was so good, is because the big thing about mark is making variants work for you. Sure, if they iced up HQ on turn 1, your mark was on R&D, that's great because you clicklessly get to see a card and that's obviously good because it could be an agenda, it could be like information. But if you roll archives, what are you meant to do with that? And this is where like Info Bounty is like the great equalizer. No matter what, you're gaining 2 credits. If it's a bad mark, you can still run it. And it just functionally makes one central run a turn, a clickless central run, 2 credits cheaper. That is such a good ability. And so now you're going to need more reasons to want to run if you're playing Sable. So maybe we're all going to start playing Penny Shaver. Leech is really good too. You just need these incentives to run central servers to get more value, because a bad mark will just basically be a much worse mark than it was before. This again, help corps that don't want to ice up everything, like Thule, you're getting the clicks back, that's fine. LEO will be a bit better because there's less clicks to spend. Asset spam, like they just will be less clicks to touch cards, let alone you're getting the free money to deal with things. I am worried about other stuff though, like Nebula. Mind you, the Sable into Nebula matchup was probably one of Nebula's worst matchup, and that matchup got a lot worse because you're now losing 2 credits a turn, and that is so much. I think the card people are talking about banning is Chesva, and I'm kind of agree with this, because banning Chesva hurts every single criminal in a really, really, really big way, but banning Info Bounty only touches Sable. And I think that's what we kind of want to see. I think we want to see more diversity in the criminal side, because while honestly the only criminal that's showing up at all is Sable, now there's a reason to maybe consider Tsakhia, which is interesting. Maybe we'll see some of the more weird or new stuff like Baz show up, Az can show up, maybe Moosely Hot, but I'd be surprised. Red team is a 3-card rebate, yeah, but it's really clunky because you have to pay 5 credits and then you're locked out of it. It's only a 7 credit econ card on red team, and you can't play run events. Like, red team is so much worse. And I want to be very clear, I was playing 3 red team in core, I cut down to 2. Having this in your opening hand, where as soon as you play this, if the run doesn't make sense for you, and then they ice that thing up, you're in a bad spot, and then you're always behind credits on this until you've made 3 runs, and you can't play run events. Right? Like, it's not a replacement for Info Bounty. This card is very, very clunky. It's really, really hard to get down. Transitioning to open decklist for all events would be a hit against Alco. Its biggest advantage is that it's so many win kill strategies, just knowing the corpse strat is a huge equalizer. Hey Loy, how's it going? I do think that open decklists disproportionately favors good players. It is intimidating to the point of being useless, if not worse than useless, I think, to newer players to hand them a decklist in which they might not know what most of the cards do. I've got some pretty strong feedback from players who are new. If you give them a deck list, it makes them feel bad because they don't know what to do with the information, and you're just going to have the newer players stomp harder. I don't think that's the direction we should be going in. I'll be very clear. If you ask me, do I always want to play, if I could only choose one, would I only want to play open or closed deck list? I would always pick open deck list. I think it's a much more interesting game, but I think it disproportionately benefits top tier players. And that's not great, but it's an interesting conversation. I always think red team is 15 credits, not 12. Me too, Pat. I think when we last played, I put 15 credits on it. I'm pretty sure I messed it up because I put 15 straight on here. 15 would feel right, because then it feels like a regolith. 15 feels good. Open decklist contradicts a bunch of what the game is doing. Yeah, it has an impact on the meta too. It will just inherently have an impact. There's a lot of decks that will, like, you know, become Swiss cheese that are really good in a closed deck list, but then fall apart in open deck list. That's a pretty common pattern because they fall apart. Their combo is no longer secret, but a lot of people like those secret combos. Anyways, I'm scared about this change. I'm interested to see what it does. I'm glad we're not going to be run down by Sable. I think last night I was like very embarrassingly dooming about how bad the Sable matchup was, where it was like tier 1 Sable versus us playing our garbage. And like that deck not gaining the extra, like we look at the replays, like we took 24 clicks, Sable took like 60, and then also gained twice as much money as us. And losing the free money of Info Bounty, this is such a massive change. Like Info Bounty is a huge change. Deep Dive is a structural change. Like I think Shaper can survive this as long as they can figure out what their win condition is. But Bankhar is also such a massive change because they really have to figure out how they're breaking ice. They really have to figure out how they're making money. And I don't know what that change is going to be, but it's very, very interesting. Lastly, finally, we decided to reintroduce Luminal Transubstantiation. HB is seeing minimal play at competitive level. We've seen the data, and we believe unbanning Luminal will help improve corp diversity and giving scoring HB decks the edge they need to out-tempo some of the more aggressive runner threats. I don't like this. I think this is what you have to do because it's very obvious you need to give HB a bone here because HB is absolutely struggling. If we look at HB representation, right, the most is 65.5 on Leo, and Leo is a new identity, so it gets a bit more play. Poetry showing up literally nowhere. But again, there's more people playing Alco than almost all of HB. If we look at the HB win rates, the top placing HB deck has a 47% win rate. After that, PD is on 45. Like clearly nothing is happening. This must be, oh, Mirror Morph at 35, but these numbers get pretty low. I don't like this. For those who don't know, at some point I said HB, Luminal was banned. I was upset. I hope they would come back one day. I actually don't think for me that I want this day to be the day that Luminal comes back. Luminal is massively powerful. It's a limit 1 per deck 3/2 that when you score this, you get another turn. And that's really, really good. I think the problems with HP right now are so structural that adding Luminal back will only impact like the 30% of the matchup in which it gets scored and actually does something. And it'll be very significant in those matchups. But I feel like having so much of your faction's perceived power on a limit 1 per deck is really, really inconsistent, especially for a faction that's meant to feel consistent all the time. Now, without Info Bounty, without Hoshiko, oh, sorry, not Hoshiko, without Info Bounty, without Bankhar, I think there's a chance that HP will just feel better overall. Without Deep Dive, it might just feel better overall. But if you've seen or you tried to build HP decks recently, the biggest issue they struggle with right now is their agenda suite is kind of sloppy. So it's nice to get another agenda to add to that pool. But currently, the 5/3s that you need to play, Vacheron is banned. Salvo Testing makes no sense unless you're playing a core damage deck, which is obviously a subsection of HP decks. And then you either end up playing Send a Message or you spend 1 influence on a vulnerability audit, which is a card that I just kind of don't like. And it sucks. It means if you're playing poetry, you have to play a Send a Message in your poetry deck, which like makes no sense. So it's nice to have another 3/2 so that the agenda suites get a bit more reasonable of cards you care to score out. And there's still some really good HP agendas, don't get me wrong, as much as it is now the faction that's playing Off-World Office and being happy with it, which is not everyone at this point. HP's best agenda is Off-World. I like ADT a heck of a lot. I think this is such a powerful card. PD goes through enough of its deck that it does see Luminal kind of every game. Yeah, I guess there's some truth to that, but it is like inherently it's a limit 1 per deck. So it is the least consistent card in your deck to see out of any. And it's going to give HP some power back. Poetry is going to like it. I think there's almost no HP deck that wouldn't consider playing Luminal. I just think here like HP needs help, and I don't love the help coming in as a 1 per deck. Again, I do think I'd love to track the data. The decks, like, this is like such a silly number to track because it's saying the games in which they scored points where they won more, but like the games in which they score the Luminal versus they don't, it's going to feel like night and day, is my guess to some extent. I do think the way this is addressed, obviously, runners being a bit less powerful is going to help, but I do think we just need more HP cards, which hopefully they'll come sooner than later. Is Alco the most dominant corp in the game's history? Remember when C-Team was everywhere? It's hard to tell that. I don't think it's the case. I do think we've seen metas where the top cuts were like, 7 out of 8, like CTM at some points, stuff like that. I think CTM's the one that quickly comes to mind. Obviously in early metas when there weren't a lot of choices, but I would guess it's CTM, but Alco's not that far off. CI Worlds 2017 was most represented and oppressive than Alco. Yeah, I guess CI was pretty big, but CI only was really big then. Otherwise it was kind of a pocket pick because not everyone could play it to success. It was a hard deck to pilot. Having 6 of your influence pre-sent before you start building your deck in HB hurts. What do you think is your 6th influence? I think talking about the Spin Doctor problem is another problem outside the scope of this, but yeah, I'm coming to the point where I kind of wish Spin Doctor was an influence. I think that would help. As much as not NBN doesn't need the help. I suspect the Luminal may eat another ban once HP gets another playable for 2. Yes, I do think, before we go to the lesser points, that Luminal could be rebanned at some point. That's totally fine. I don't expect Info Bounty will ever come back unless corporations get way more powerful, but I do think Deep Dive could come back. I don't think Bankhar will come back. I think we'll see a new Bankhar. I think Deep Dive can eventually be unbanned at some point once we have more tools to deal with it. I don't think Info Bounty is that easy to come back unless corporations really change the way they play. Luminal could come and go. CS7 HP Moons were worse than Alco currently is. Oh yeah, ETF Moons was really, really bad. Friends in High Places meta. Rip Phoenix, yeah, Phoenix is cooked. Back into the ashes, nice try. That feels bad for sure. Other considerations, Bravado. A Bravado ban would ubiquitously hurt all criminals at the time when criminal identities other than Sable are not performing well. Let's look at the data. Runner data. Yep. Next most played is Mercury. No, that's next most win rate is Mercury. But yeah, it's only Sable that's converting. I do want to say that most of the criminal players are just playing Sable. So a lot of the players who are playing the other stuff are either players who are not, thralls to the global meta, which means more the plugged in competitive players end up on Sable is my guess. Again, sorry if that's meant to sound offensive. If you're the As player in your tournament, you're the best. As is great, but you know what I mean. It's like a lot of the competitive players who want to play criminal end up playing Sable, so these numbers are probably would be higher if those players transitioned over, but still the numbers aren't great. Let's be clear. Yeah, we believe that more targeted bans we're making to address Sable will be more of a boost to scoring corps. I agree. I'm excited for that. Bravado showed up just as context. This is the last ban list. This is the ban list from 2504, where they mentioned both considering banning Luminal, unbanning Luminal as a way to strengthen corps. They said we're not going to do that right now. We eventually determined that this would not be the right way to strengthen the corps side as a whole. As a 1 per deck card, Luminal is unlikely to change the archetypes are available. It just makes games where it happens to score more explosive. This is exactly my point, and I don't think this has changed. And they said this in the last article, but this is exactly what I'm saying. Like, it helps, and HB needs help, but this is not the way that you should be helping the faction, I don't think. Now, Bravado, originally we intended to ban moshing. In context, this last ban list banned a bunch of powerful runner cards as well. Criminal did not lose a card unless you count Daily Cast as a pseudo-criminal card, which, yeah, criminals did play Daily Cast. And so Bravado was the one way to deal with runners, because again, the last ban list targeted runners to bring them down, and this conversation about banning Bravado is back. So they're going to leave that for now and see how it is. SMC, while Shapers have not been dominant this metagame, I think they are actually. I do think Shaper is not the most powerful, sorry, not the most popular, but arguably the most powerful. I think Shaper has like by far the most conversion rate in the modern meta. The faction's potential for competitive success is clear. With Muse and Madani in the format, banning SMC while maintaining the feel of the faction seems more possible than ever. However, we believe losing Deep Dive is a significant enough hit to the faction and don't want to remove another card right now. Shout out to SMC, which has been the card that has shown up by name in the most ban list articles since the history of Netrunner without actually ever catching a ban. I'm saying that not because I think it needs to be banned out. I just think it's really funny. This card has always been like, oh, we'll get you next time, SMC. And no one's ever taken down SMC because it is just so integral to the way that Shaper plays. We've been in metas where SMC has not been as popular. It's still relatively popular right now, but it's always got away with its tricks, which is just kind of funny that this thing keeps surviving. Sable's kind of always been the go-to red crim. Yeah. By far. Isn't part of the problem that Alco effect is so strong and consistent and flexible, it can kind of take over independence of the archetype you're playing? I personally feel like that's a letdown. Alco is definitely very strong and powerful and flexible, which is not a bad thing. Like, we want corps to be strong and powerful and flexible. I do think a lot of the conversation around this is that a lot of the other corporations don't feel like they have enough tools and agency, and a lot of the things that ended up on this ban list, Alco is inherently just good against, right? Like, Bankhar is kind of hard to play against Alco. Deep Dive is kind of hard to play against Alco, and for that reason, the argument is that it's seeing more meta share. We'll find out together if that's the case or not. Tired ban list feels not ideal, but our meta is cooked. I understand why Luminal and Bankhar are what we're seeing. I'm pretty positive about this. I think these are like the sort of changes that make you excited about deck building again. This makes me excited about playing more corps. Like, overall, I think this is kind of sick. I'm not saying that you have to think that, because if you don't, that's totally fine. But like, overall, this is a pretty good change list for Continentals. I'm excited for Continentals. Madani should 100% go before SMC. Yeah, I don't like Madani, but I don't think it's going to happen. Touch-ups has cemented itself. I'm so glad they mentioned touch-ups as an egregious tool, sick, in a number of kill decks, allowing for combo kills while bypassing tech like Steelskin Scarring, which helps define Anarch's natural role in the meta. However, currently the most successful touch-up kill decks out of Nebula Talent Management and Pravdivos Consulting aren't posting the results needed for us to feel comfortable banning touch-ups. I hate this twicely, because I think touch-ups is such a cooked card. It's like such a messed up card. Neural EMP was not healthy for the game, and so instead we added Neural EMP that is attached to scoring, which is like, scoring has actually been a very consistent angle to attack runners somewhat recently. We've seen multiple cards that when you score them give tags or do damage. That is a thing that NSG has been promoting, and attaching double Neural EMP, a card that was deemed too poisonous for the meta a long time ago, is now back on tempo with advancements and requiring no interaction from the runner. I also do not understand this card. It is overloaded. The advancements are not attached to the cards you see. This just being down tempo for the runner means that it's fine to play on tempo. The fact that it's a Nebula support piece, can't stand this card. I am really hoping at some point this gets banned. This is my soapbox. Yeah, this is the idea, right? Like, you touch ups tomorrow's headline, you're dead. It's that simple. We've seen it. Turn 2. You touch ups tomorrow's headline into end of line, game's over. That can happen. See how they run. Like, we've seen so many cards like this. I don't fully understand it. We've seen other, like, why did I bring up Complete Image here? Oh yeah, because touch ups into Complete Image is like a legitimate line you can pursue at this point in the game. Like, it's absurd. It's absurd. I don't get it. And again, this is the bummer, and this is kind of the issue, right? Like, I really don't like Nebula. I won't spend more time on the channel talking about it, but this is exactly what I was worried about getting to this ban list. I've said this many times on the channel, is that Nebula is not converting enough for it to actually get like banned out. To me, it's a sentiment problem, and I just want to, like, I can't say this because it's wildly against organized play policy. I should just start throwing my Nebula game so the win rate goes up. I'm totally kidding. But Nebula has like a 50% win rate. So it's not overperforming. And I do think Nebula's win rate is just going to go up. I think banning Bankhar, getting rid of Phoenix for whatever it's worth, but like also getting rid of Info Bounty, there's no way that Nebula is not going to become more powerful. Which maybe that's the narrative we get to finally getting rid of this thing, because I really don't care for it. But it is technically not the top performing NBN, as much as it did see almost as much play as like most HB decks, and still hits a 50% win rate in what's meant to be a runner favor meta. So you know, figure that out, I guess. But yeah, it's weird. I'm glad they at least talked about it, but like, oh my God, am I glad for some cards there to go. We need a Nebula clip show. It's every week at Thursday night. I think Nebula would have a higher win rate if all the top players weren't playing Egg and Op. I don't think so, because I think it's much easier to beat Nebula than it is to beat Alco. I think if all the best players moved to Nebula, Nebula would be winning more, but not that much more. I think it's way more beatable than Auko. I also think it's funny they don't mention the egg touch-ups combo. It's kind of niche. There's not a lot of decks that do that. That's kind of like we saw a new list by Thomas Haas posted, but it's not super like a big part of the meta right now. If it gets bullied by Sable's the thing, and when Sable being worse, it'll probably be more prevalent. Exactly. To finish this off, World Championship ban list timing, we are currently cautiously optimistic that this ban list update will be able to be addressed both the issues of corp diversity and side balance in the current standard meta. As the stakes of competition rise for the organized play season, we believe that the ban list puts us in the best position to curate the best meta possible for the World Championships. This is huge. You have to understand the narrative. They're going to make maybe some changes to see what Continentals like, and then they'll return on Wednesday, September 17th, 2025 to prepare us for Worlds in Edinburgh. So again, are we going to see Auko do really well at this Continental season? I think yes, but I think we have the space to make other things happen. And I'm very, positive about that. I'm very excited about that. But if you have and continue to have the sort of Nebula issues I know I have, that can be addressed in a month. This is not that far away. Sorry, 2 months from now. So just hold on for a bit. But I think Continentals is going to be very, very exciting. This is not tournament legal to 1st of August. I do think the Toronto Megacities is in the old meta because they all have to be in the same meta, all the Megacities. But for Continentals, so on the 2nd, I believe we have the Continentals if you're in Australia. I think it's in Perth. I don't know. Shout out to the folks organizing that, to Tom and the crew. We're running a Continentals here on August 22nd to 24th. We'd love to have you. It's going to be a killer time. It's a 3-day event. The venue is great. We're doing a fantastic job. We have great prize support. None of our prize support got banned, so that's good. And then there is one also in Cologne. I believe it is somewhere in the middle there, probably like the 16th or 19th. You probably know when it is. If you're in Europe, go to that event. It's going to be great. Sydney's the 9th and 10th. Oh, is it really? I thought it was the 2nd, 3rd. Okay. Really? Oh, it's not Australia, it's APAC Continentals. I really thought the day was different. I thought it was the same day as Toronto. Maybe Cologne is, Is Europe? Is EMEA on that date? Do I have the dates backwards? Oh, I have it backwards. Okay, so yes. So this one is the first one, which will be, this will be the first major event in the new meta. So this is what people are preparing for. So yeah, the Cologne one is on the 1st, and then yeah, a week after it's in Australia. Thank you for that correction. Very important. Does anyone have a Nebula deck recommendation that isn't a kill? You can find a couple if you just search online for Nebula. I would search like Nano Management. That's a really strong card because you can fast advance a 4-2, which can be a 4-3. How to beat Nebula, install Chesva, that's it. I mean, it's not going to be easier than it was a while ago. That's for sure. But Chesva definitely helps. I think the last tab I have open is Hoshiko. Hoshiko was not addressed. I thought this was a card that I was convinced I was going to get banned out. And I don't know, if we look at the Hoshiko numbers, like Hoshiko is still very popular and Hoshiko is still winning, is the most winning runner in the meta. And I think the big problem I have with the Hoshiko decks is that they're like the same decks they've been for such a long time, which you could argue is the same against Criminal. Shaper is like maybe 60% there. And I thought they're going to ban Hoshiko, so we have a reason to go try and play Topon and do all that cool stuff. I don't know why that didn't happen. It's not a huge concern. We've seen some metas where Hoshiko is like a pretty, you know, homogenous part of the meta. This is what, UK? Yeah, UK Nationals. So out of the top 16, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Hoshiko. So almost top half the top cut. This is a bit earlier. This is America's Online Mega City. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Hoshikos out of top 8. Like Hoshiko is still super prominent. Not as often as consistent as Sable has been, but definitely the second most. And the biggest issue is like all these decks are functionally no different than they were before. I don't think the SPT's job is to make the meta like different than the meta a year ago. I don't think that is in their purview or their requirements. So like this is functionally the same deck that we've been playing since 2021, I think. I don't think it's their job to fix that if this seems to be a healthy and interesting part of the meta, but I was kind of convinced we'd see something about this change. And I guess the change is Bankhar, but I still think at the end of the day, Hoshiko is going to overpower all the other Anarchs. At least if you're playing like, you know, run touch cards game. I think we really got close to Hoshiko ban on Elevation launch, but now it might be a while. Yeah, I think Hoshiko on Elevation ban is, I was also expecting Hoshiko to be banned on Elevation. But alas, at least Hoshiko's fun to play. And we'll see without Bankhar if I'm how scared you are in the early games against that tournament Hosh. Whether we just all play transfer well Hoshiko. Anyways, that's the ban list. I think it's pretty good. Pretty optimistic about it as a whole. Huge shout out to the standard ban list team, who not only do all this write up, they do all the testing behind closed doors, the arguments, the paragraphs, the late nights, the midnight oil. A lot of work goes into this, just so at the end of the day you can be upset about Oko. But I mean it, for it's like such thankless work, and it's so important that our game is exciting and fun and people want to go out and compete and organize play stuff. Like, it is such an important job, like most things at NSG, and it's all volunteers. So give a shout out to the standard ban list team if you know any nice people on it who are doing testing and all that sort of great stuff. I love the articles too. The articles are always really well written to explain what they're thinking, which is not a given. They don't have to do this. They could just say, like, here's 3 bans, figure it out. But they do better than that. And I guess a little segue to that is that there's become a playtester. However fun put this out. Oh, actually, this is different than SBT. I'm still going to shout this out because it's related to balance. Is that NSG always wants playtesters. And if you're listening to this and you think, oh man, I would do better with the meta, I would not have printed Oko, become a playtester. It doesn't matter if you're a competitive player or not. They want players of all sort of like profiles. So if you're a casual player, if you play like locally with your friends, if you're a competitive player, if you only play Eternal, like at the end of the day, they just want more people holding the cards and giving them feedback. And then it's up to them to figure out what to do with the feedback. So if you want to be a product playtester, see upcoming sets, upcoming cool things they're working on ahead of time, get some games in. I think the amount of time that you have to give is pretty flexible as long as you are reporting some amount of information. I think that's all they need. They have their own JNet client from my understanding. I'm not a playtester. The workload is expected that playtester commit a minimum of 2 hours a week on playtesting. So some people do a lot more, 2 hours. Maybe you can do that. And maybe it's a fun time to meet some other people and play some Netrunner online. Give it a shot for sure. I think playtesting is super important. And it's obviously takes a lot of work. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Very interesting. Thank you, Spider, for hanging out on a Friday. We streamed for 1:20. It is now noon 25. From this point, I think we're going to wrap up the stream. Hopefully you're doing well. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing some casting for the mega city in New York City, in Brooklyn. The Kato is running. It is still the old meta, of course, as all the mega cities are, but you can watch that. I'm assuming it'll be on the Null Signal Games channel. I'm pretty sure it'll be there. So that'll be tomorrow, and it'll be streamed on Sunday as well with the top cut, which I won't be commentating that, but I have no doubt it'll be a party. So that is this weekend. In a couple hours, I'm going to be streaming some Marvel Champions on the sister channel, the Crash Space. If you want to hang out and watch some Marvel Champions, that's a fun game I like too, that we stream on Friday afternoons. And this is the last Friday before I go to full-time work. We'll be in office doing a regular 9 to 5 next week. So it's really nice to be able to hang out on a Friday and do a thing like this, which, not surprising, is 6:30 a.m. here in Honolulu. Good morning, David. Rise and shine. Being mean to us bad players challenge impossible. I think that might have been about the Mercury win rate or whatever. That's mostly it. The German meta also had their Germany's Next Hoshiko regular tournaments. I'm just bored by her. Yeah, that's fair. I could see why you'd be bored. Okay, I'm getting job not relevant subtype again. Anyways, thanks so much for hanging out. If you have any comments, if you're watching this not live, hit me up in the YouTube comments. Again, like, I do think sentiment is observed. So, you know, as long as you're respectful, which sometimes it's hard around Nebula, as long as you're respectful in your feedback, I have no doubt that she reads that sort of stuff and like kind of gleans information either for future designs or for like concerns when it comes for future ban lists. So again, your voice matters to some extent, just like mine does. That's mostly it. Thanks so much for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one. Drop by on Saturday or later today. Enjoy the new ban list. Link is in the description. Bye.